In the summer of 2009, thousands of mechanics across America received a very strange order from the US government. They took perfectly good cars, Ford Explorers, Jeep Cherokees, reliable trucks, and drove them into their service bays. They didn't fix them. Instead, they drained the oil from the engine and poured in a strange, thick solution, sodium silicate. You might know it as liquid glass. Then they turned the key. They slammed the accelerator pedal to the floor. The engine screamed, it roared, and as the internal temperature soared, the liquid glass did its job. It hardened, turning the inside of the engine into a solid block of glass. The piston seized, the engine block cracked. And then silence. The car was dead forever. This was the car allowance rebate system, better known as cash for clunkers. It was a $3 billion stimulus program designed to save the auto industry and help the environment. The deal was simple. If you traded in your old gas-guzzling clunker and bought a new, more efficient car, the government would give you a rebate of up to $4,500. But there was a catch, a brutal one. Your old car had to be destroyed. It couldn't be resold. It couldn't be donated to charity. It had to be executed. In just 2 months, nearly 700,000 cars were systematically destroyed. The government hailed it as a massive success. Ford and Toyota sold thousands of new vehicles. The GDP got a temporary little bump. But economists looked at the wreckage and saw something else entirely. They saw a giant real-world example of the broken window fallacy. A paradox showing that you can't make a society richer by destroying what it already owns. And worse, they saw how a program designed to help the middle class ended up crushing the poor. The government's logic was based on classic Keynesian stimulus. The theory went like this. People aren't buying cars. If we give them money, they will buy cars. This will save General Motors and Chrysler from collapse. And on the surface, it worked. In July and August of 2009, car sales exploded. Dealerships were packed. But a couple of economists, Mian and Amir Sufi, asked a very simple, very important question. Did we actually create new sales? Or did we just steal them from the future? This concept is called the pull-forward effect. Imagine you were already planning to buy a new car in December. Suddenly, the government offers you a huge discount, but only if you buy it in August. What do? You buy it in August, of course. The sales chart for August looks amazing. A record-breaking month. But then December rolls around. You don't buy a car because you already did. The sales chart for December crashes. Mian and Sufi analyzed the data and found that this is exactly what happened. Almost all of the huge sales spike during the program was just sales pulled forward from the next 7 to 8 months. By the spring of 2010, the effect had completely vanished. The total number of cars sold was basically the same. The program didn't create new demand. It just shifted the timeline. We spent $3 billion of taxpayer money just to make the sales graph look spiky for a couple of months. But the real economic crime was the destruction itself. This brings us to a famous idea from the 19th century economist, Frederick Bastiat, called the parable of the broken window. Imagine a boy throws a rock and breaks a shopkeeper's window. A crowd gathers, and someone says, "Hey, this is actually a good thing." The shopkeeper has to pay a glazier to fix the window. That glazier now has money, which he'll spend at the bakery. The baker will spend it somewhere else. Breaking the window creates jobs and stimulates the economy. Bastiat pointed out that this ignores what is unseen. Yes, we see the glazier getting paid. What we do see is what the shopkeeper would have done with that money if the window hadn't been broken. Maybe he was going to buy a new pair of shoes. Now the shoemaker loses a sale. The glazier gains a job, but the shoemaker loses one. The town isn't any richer. In fact, it's poorer by one window. Destruction is not profit. Cash for clunkers was the broken window fallacy on an industrial scale. We took 700,000 functioning assets, cars that could have been driven for years, and poured liquid glass into them. A used Ford Explorer might have been worth $4,000. It had years of life left in it. It could have been a first car for a college student, a reliable ride for a single mom, or a work vehicle for a construction worker. Instead, it was turned into a cube of scrap metal. That's an estimated $2 to $3 billion of real, tangible wealth, simply erased from existence. We confuse spending money with creating wealth. And this leads to the cruelest part of the story. Who buys brand new cars? Mostly the upper middle class and the wealthy. Who relies on the used car market? The working class and the poor. Cash for Clunkers gave a $4,500 subsidy to the new car buyers. But to pay for it, it systematically destroyed the supply of affordable used cars. It's basic supply and demand. When you instantly remove 700,000 units of a product from the market, the price of what's left goes up. And it did. In the months following the program, the average price of a used car skyrocketed by 10, 20, even 30% in some cases. So, who paid that price? The single mother whose old car finally died in October 2009. She went to the used car lot looking for a cheap, reliable replacement. But there were no cheap cars left. The government had destroyed them. She now had to pay $2,000 more for a worse car with higher mileage. In effect, the program took money from the poor in the form of higher used car prices and gave it to wealthier people buying new cars. It was a massive, regressive redistribution of wealth, disguised as a stimulus plan. Now, the defenders of the program will say, but wait, it was for the environment. We got gas guzzlers off the road. Well, did we? Let's look at the numbers. The average fuel economy of the clunkers traded in was about 16 miles per gallon. The average fuel economy of the new cars bought was about 25 miles per gallon. That's an improvement of 9 mpg. Not bad. But this ignores the massive environmental cost of building a new car. Mining the steel, shipping the parts across the globe. The energy used in the factory, it all creates a huge carbon footprint. It takes years of driving a slightly more efficient car to pay back the carbon debt of building it in the first place. By destroying a working car prematurely, we threw away all the energy already embedded in that vehicle. Researchers at UC Davis calculated that the cost per ton of carbon reduced by this program was somewhere between $200 and $500. At the time, the market price for carbon credits was about $20 a ton. This means cash for clunkers was one of the most expensive and inefficient ways to reduce carbon ever invented. We could have achieved far more for the environment by just planting trees or insulating homes for a fraction of the cost. This destructive mindset is still with us today. You see it in the concept of planned obsolescence and the ongoing fight over the right to repair. Big corporations want you to scrap your old device and buy the new one. They design phones with batteries you can't replace and farm equipment with software only they can fix. They call it innovation, but from an economic standpoint, it's just wealth destruction. If you have to buy a new $1,000 phone every 2 years because the $50 battery died, you are being made poorer. Cash for clunkers was basically state-sponsored planned obsolescence. It taught us a powerful lesson. Destruction is never production. You can't burn your furniture to heat your house and claim you're getting richer. The program was a temporary sugar high for the auto industry, a tragedy for the used car market, and a masterclass in bad economics for the rest of us. The government got so focused on the flow of money that it completely ignored the stock of real wealth. So, the next time you see an old beat-up truck chugging down the road, maybe show it a little respect. That truck is a survivor. It escaped the liquid glass. And it's still doing the noble economic work of providing affordable transportation, instead of sitting as a worthless cube of scrap metal in a landfill. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, be sure to subscribe for more stories about the hidden economics all around us.